Imagine arriving at an airport at 6 in the morning. You haven't even reached your gate yet, and money is already changing hands. You paid for your flight, you paid for your luggage, maybe you paid extra for your seat. Then you walk into the terminal and see coffee shops, restaurants, duty, free stores, advertisements, lounges, rental cars, parking garages, and hotels. At first, the airport business seems simple. Airplanes land, airlines pay the airport makes money. But that's only the beginning, because an airport isn't really just a place where airplanes take off and land. An airport is a giant machine built around one incredibly valuable asset, passengers. Millions of people arrive with money, limited time, and somewhere they need to be. And the airport has access to all of them. So today, let's follow the money, because the surprising truth is that airports don't simply make money from airplanes. They monetize airlines, passengers, land, infrastructure, retail space, parking, advertising, and even your time. Let's start with the obvious customer, the airline. Every airport provides enormous amounts of infrastructure: runways, taxiways, gates, aircraft parking areas, terminals, baggage systems, passenger facilities, security areas. All of this costs an enormous amount of money to build and maintain. So airlines pay fees to use it. Depending on the airport, these can include landing or movement charges, passenger-related charges, terminal rents, gate fees, aircraft parking, and other aeronautical charges. Imagine a massive aircraft arriving at an airport. It lands on the runway, moves across taxiways, parks at a gate. Hundreds of passengers enter the terminal. Their bags move through the baggage system. The aircraft eventually leaves. Every step depends on infrastructure that the airport has paid to build and maintain. So the airport charges the airline. But here's where the business model becomes much more interesting. The airport doesn't only have an airline customer. It also has you. Think about what happens after you arrive. Maybe you park your car. Maybe you buy a coffee because you're tired. You grab breakfast. You stop at a convenience store. You buy something in duty-free. You pay for a lounge. You see an advertisement. You rent a car at your destination. None of these transactions require you to buy another plane ticket. And that's the airport's secret weapon, foot traffic. But not ordinary foot traffic. These are millions of people who have already chosen to come to the airport. They have somewhere to be, they often have time to kill, and once they're inside security, their alternatives are limited. That's incredibly valuable to businesses. Imagine opening a restaurant on an ordinary street. You have to convince customers to drive there, find parking, walk inside, and choose your restaurant. At an airport, millions of potential customers have already done all of that. They came to you. That's why airports can operate almost like giant shopping centers. Restaurants pay for space, retailers pay for space, lounges pay for space, airlines lease offices and facilities. Cargo companies lease warehouses, maintenance companies lease buildings, hotels operate on airport property. And depending on the arrangement, airports can also receive payments connected to sales. The FAA separates non-aeronautical airport revenue into categories such as food and beverage, retail, rental cars, parking and ground transportation, hotels, property leases, and other services. So suddenly the airport doesn't look like an airport anymore. It's an infrastructure business, a landlord, a parking business, a retail marketplace, an advertising platform, a transportation hub, and sometimes a property developer. All in one. Now consider parking. A huge airport may have thousands of parking spaces. One passenger parks for an hour. Another leaves a car for 5 days. Then another customer uses the same space. The physical asset doesn't have to be rebuilt every time. The same parking space can generate revenue again and again. The airport can also earn money from taxis, shuttles, rideshare operations, rental cars, and other ground transportation services. So before you've even reached your gate, there may already be several businesses generating economic activity around you. Then there's advertising. Airports are incredibly attractive advertising environments because they concentrate large numbers of people in predictable locations. You walk through a terminal, you wait at your gate, you stand at baggage claim, you walk through a corridor. And everywhere you look, there can be screens, signs, and advertisements. Advertisers aren't simply buying a wall. They're buying access to an audience: business travelers, families, tourists, international travelers. People heading to specific cities, people with time to spare. The airport is selling something advertisers desperately want: attention. But now comes the part that makes the business much harder than it looks. Running an airport is unbelievably expensive. Think about everything that has to keep operating: runways, terminals, baggage systems, security systems, fire and rescue services, heating and cooling, lighting, elevators, escalators, roads, bridges, parking structures, technology, cleaning, maintenance staff, safety systems, and then there's the biggest expense of all: infrastructure. Airports constantly have to build, replace, and upgrade enormous facilities. A new terminal can cost billions, a runway can cost billions, a baggage system can cost hundreds of millions. Security technology becomes outdated, buildings age, road systems need expansion, and if an airport borrowed money to build these facilities, that debt still has to be paid. This creates a strange economic problem. An airport has enormous revenue opportunities, but it also has enormous fixed costs. Imagine spending $2 billion to build a terminal. Whether 10 million passengers use it or 20 million passengers use it, the building still exists. The lights still have to work, the security systems still have to operate, the building still needs maintenance. Employees still need to be paid, and the debt doesn't disappear. That's why passenger volume is so important. The more passengers an airport serves, the more people are effectively sharing the cost of that enormous infrastructure. Imagine an airport has $1 billion in annual costs. If 20 million passengers use it, that's an average burden of $50 per passenger. If 40 million passengers use it, the same $1 billion becomes $25 per passenger. Real airport finances are far more complicated, but the principle is simple: scale matters. And that leads to one of the most important ideas in airport economics. An airport wants two things: more passengers and more value from every passenger. Two airports could each serve 50 million passengers. But if one has stronger restaurants, better retail, more parking, better property development, and more advertising opportunities, it can potentially generate much more commercial revenue. That's why passenger experience matters. A passenger who spends 2 hours inside the terminal has more opportunities to spend money than someone who walks straight through. Better restaurants can increase spending, better retail can increase spending, better parking can increase convenience and revenue. Better lounges can create premium revenue. The passenger isn't simply a passenger. The passenger is a bundle of economic opportunities. And airports have another advantage: time. Imagine you're sitting at your gate. Your flight leaves in 90 minutes. You don't want to leave the airport. You can't risk missing your flight. You're hungry. You see a coffee shop selling a $6 drink. You don't have to buy it. But your alternatives are limited. This is sometimes described as captive demand. The customer still has a choice, but not the same range of choices they would have outside the airport. That's why terminal space can be so valuable. Now look beyond the terminal. Airports can control huge amounts of strategically located land. That land can support cargo facilities, warehouses, maintenance centers, offices, hotels, parking facilities, and rental car operations. This is important because an airport isn't just selling access to a runway, it's selling access to a location connected directly to a transportation network. And location has always been valuable. Heathrow provides a good example. In 2025, Heathrow handled roughly *84. 5 million passengers and reported about pound 3. 55 billion in revenue But that revenue didn't come from one source. Heathrow reports aeronautical income from passenger charges, movement charges, and aircraft parking. It also generates commercial income through retail concessions, car parks, advertising, premium products, property and transportation services such as Heathrow Express. And Heathrow operates under economic regulation. That matters because airports aren't always free to charge whatever they want. In the UK, the Civil Aviation Authority regulates certain airport charges through price controls. Heathrow also describes a single till. approach where commercial revenues such as retail and parking are considered when determining airport charges. So commercial success can affect the economics of the regulated side of the airport. And there's another detail passengers often misunderstand. Not every airport-related fee you see on a ticket becomes pure profit for the airport. In the United States, for example, eligible airports can impose passenger facility charges with FAA approval. These charges help fund approved projects involving areas such as safety, security, and capacity. So when you see airport-related fees, you can't simply assume all that money goes into an airport operator's pocket. Some revenue pays employees, some maintains infrastructure, some services debt, some finances approved projects. Some belongs to concession operators or other businesses. The airport ecosystem is much more complicated than a simple cash register. Let's build a simplified example. Imagine an airport serving 20 million passengers every year. Suppose it generates an average of $25 per passenger from airport-related revenue. That's 20 million times $25 equals $500 million. Now suppose commercial activities add another $15 per passenger through parking, retail, restaurants, property, advertising, and transportation. That's another 20 million times $15 equals $300 million. The airport now has $800 million in revenue. Sounds incredible. But suppose operating and capital-related costs consume $450 million. Then financing and debt-related obligations consume another $200 million. Suddenly that $800 million doesn't look nearly as enormous. That's the airport paradox. Huge revenue doesn't automatically mean huge profit. And the danger becomes obvious when passenger numbers fall. Imagine an airport needs $650 million annually to cover its simplified costs. At $40 of revenue per passenger, it needs about 25 million passengers just to generate that amount. If traffic falls from 20 million passengers to 15 million, revenue at the same rate drops to $600 million. The airport now has a $50 million gap, and the airport can't simply shut down its runway because business is slow. The infrastructure remains, the debt remains, the maintenance remains. The airport still has to operate. That's why events like recessions, airline failures, pandemics, geopolitical disruptions, and major changes in travel demand can be financially devastating. But when passenger traffic grows, the opposite can happen. More passengers create more airline activity. More airline activity creates more passengers. More passengers increase retail demand. More retail makes terminal space more valuable. More parking is used, more advertising becomes valuable. More property becomes attractive, and the entire ecosystem can reinforce itself. That's why airports are often described less like ordinary businesses and more like economic ecosystems. And there's one final piece that ties everything together, capacity. Imagine airlines want to add flights. Passengers want more seats, businesses want better connections, but the airport is already full. Now the airport has a problem. Demand exists, money exists, but the infrastructure can't handle it. That's why airports spend billions expanding terminals, gates, runways, baggage systems, and transportation connections. Heathrow invested roughly £3 billion in 2025 while describing its infrastructure as operating close to capacity. Its plans have included a proposed modernization and upgrade program worth around £10 billion for 2027-2031 That sounds enormous, but the logic is straightforward. If new infrastructure allows the airport to handle more passengers, those passengers can generate more aeronautical revenue, more retail spending, more parking, more restaurants, more advertising, and more transportation activity. The infrastructure is expensive, but capacity itself has economic value. And this is why an airport's real product isn't concrete. It isn't the runway. It isn't even the terminal. The real product is access. Access to passengers, access to airlines, access to land, access to transportation networks. access to commercial space, and access to one of the most concentrated flows of people in the modern economy. So how does an airport really make money? The simple answer is airplanes pay to land, but the real answer is much bigger. Airlines pay for infrastructure, passengers generate fees, retailers pay for space, restaurants generate concession revenue. Drivers pay for parking, rental car companies operate around the airport, transportation providers pay fees. Advertisers pay for attention, businesses lease airport property, and infrastructure charges can help finance approved projects. All of these pieces connect. The runway brings the airplane brings the passenger creates demand. The demand makes terminal space valuable, the terminal creates opportunities for retailers, the airport's land creates opportunities for property development. And the entire ecosystem feeds back into itself. That's why the next time you walk through an airport, look around. The coffee shop isn't just selling coffee, the parking garage isn't just storing cars, the advertisement isn't just a sign. The restaurant isn't just serving food, the terminal isn't just a building, they're all pieces of the same machine. The airplane brings the customer, the airport monetizes everything that happens around the customer. And that's the real business model hiding in plain sight. The runway gets you there, but the ecosystem is where the money is.